This is the Seven Figure Standard Podcast, hosted by Arash Vossoughi and Mykie Stiller, with mindset and strategies to help you break through and create personal freedom.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Seven Figure Standard Podcast. I'm Mykie Stiller, joined by my co-host, Arash Vossoughi, and we are so happy to be with you today for an incredible episode. We're going to talk about the identity gap, why you're not living at the level of your goals yet. So, Arash, I know this is something that you not only love to talk about, but you're also so good at coaching people through. What is the identity gap?
The identity gap is, I want to say this the right way. The identity gap is for the gap between where you are and where you want to be. And I want you to understand, every single person walking this planet right now has an identity gap. You could be absolutely crushing it, and there's some area in your life that you have a gap. There is an identity wall that you're hitting. You could be in the middle, and there's an identity gap. So it may not be towards income. It may not be towards your business, but it could be towards your health. There is one area that everybody has a gap. So we want to understand that is a gift. That is not something to be upset about. It's what I get to work on. And to really thrive and live a life of freedom where you're so emotionally free, you have to be determined to continuing to get better. Unless you're determined, like, I am done, I'm going to live my standard, I'm going to live the way I want to live, you're not going to do it. So we got to understand that. I remember, I'm taking you back 18, 19 years. And I first was getting mentored by my mentor. And he said, Arash, I want you to introduce me on stage. I was super uncomfortable and nervous to do it. I was not a public speaker. I was not used to doing that. And he came up to me and I said yes, because at that time I said, I'm going to do exactly what he told me for 12 months. Anyway, he said, who taught you how to tie a tie? And I said, well, nobody. This is actually my brother's tie. I asked him if he would tie a knot, and I just put it over my head. And he goes, oh, hell. He goes, we've got a lot of work to do on your identity, kid. And it had a really big impact on me in a good way. And I remember I said, I'm going to go dive into identity. I'm going to dive into identity. Him and I never talked about it. He had his intention. I had my intention. But I remember what he said. And that was I started identifying what my gaps were. Why was I not knowing how to tie a tie? Like, just the silliest things, right? And then I started looking at my patterns of my gaps, or my patterns of behaviors that were holding me back. So it's super important to embrace our identity gap from a neutral perspective. Not good or bad, it just is. Like right now, I'm working on my identity gaps. And it's something I've worked on every day since that day that I just told the story. Identity became so profound to me. You know, Mike, you were asking me yesterday, you said, how did you commit to 2 years of working on identity? And I didn't. I just said, I'm going to work on it one day at a time. It turned into 2 years of all my focus was identity.
I love the way you framed that. You said every single one of us has an identity gap. When we started at the beginning, we said why you're not living at the level of your goals yet. What does that actually mean to live at the level of your goals?
Well, first of all, most people, and I can relate because I used to be one of these people, is they're not operating from their goal. They're operating from where they currently are. They have a goal, but they're on a very similar frequency than they've always been on. They think the same thoughts, do the same things, feel the same way, surround themselves with the same environment, and they expect different results. Operating from our goal is we make every decision from the person who's already achieved our goal. We elevate our thoughts. We really become super intentional about our thinking. And we're emotionally involved in everything we're doing. Everything we're doing. You know, I had a client yesterday, Mike, tell me, you know, your processes for me are mechanical. And I said, are they? Or are you not emotionally involved in them? I said, because if you're not emotionally involved, everything's going to be mechanical. That's the opposite of being in the spirit. And that's this individual's identity gap, whether they know it or not, but when you're in the spirit of everything you're doing, there is no mechanics in it. It's just beingness. But if you're always giving yourself an out, then that is the gap, and the gap keeps beating you.
When you talk about living at the level of your goals, is it something that you're doing 100% of the time, or is it something that you're failing your way to? So it's like you're reminded to do it, and then you might fall off track, and then you get back on track, and then you get back off track, and then you get back on track. I just want to walk through like the actual percentage of time that you're living at the level of your goals.
I mean, in the beginning, it's probably 20-80 in reverse, because you have a program. But when you make your goal a love story, when it's a magnificent obsession, everything you're doing is from your goal, but it's always failing forward. If I told you 100% of the day I'm living from my goal, I don't think that would be accurate. But the majority of the time is coming from my goal. Like for me, I've been doing this so long, it's just automatic. Like I'm always thinking of bigger ideas, ways to get better, because that's what my goal demands. So let's go deeper in understanding. Your goals are about alignment and harmony with how you want to live. And once your identity aligns with wealth and freedom, that's what will become a natural outcome. But here's what people don't understand. It's always about being, doing, and having, Mike. Most people think, I'm going to have it, then I'm going to do it, then I'm going to be it. And they don't know they're thinking that way, but that's how they're thinking. But real freedom is be, do, have. You become the person, you take the actions, and then you receive the results. Now, let's go back into identity gap. Who are you being today? And is that aligned with your big goal? There's always a gap. Let's say, Mike, somebody has an income goal. Right now, there's a gap between the income they desire and the identity they're operating from. Until that gap is closed, day in and day out, they will keep sabotaging, delaying their performance or underperforming. But the person who has that next level of wealth, they understand their only job is to become that. So it's always be, do, have. That's the formula.
What you just said, and I wrote it down, I'm going to reread it because I don't even want to paraphrase. You said, once your identity aligns with wealth and freedom, it becomes a natural outcome.
Yeah.
And I know everyone listening to this, not even everyone listening to this, I think everyone likes instant gratification. They like to know that what they're working on is going to produce the outcome that they're looking for faster or right now or yesterday. So how long do you have to align with your goal in order to collapse time and see it in the physical?
Well, when you're aligned with your goal, this is what happens. I'll tell you this. I can't answer the how long because I don't know. Each goal will be different. It depends on an individual's programming. Like I've achieved goals in days. I've achieved others that took a year. I've achieved others that took 3 years. So it depends how big the goal is and where the gap is in the programming. But what I will tell you, you will know that you are aligned with your goal when you're done focusing on the how, when you're not letting outside circumstances. I promise you, if right now you are listening to me and you're letting outside circumstances control you, you're saying, when will this happen? Is this really going to happen? You're not aligned with it. You are actually aligned with what you don't want. That's what I will tell you.
I actually love that answer because you gave a good way for everyone to see, am I on track or am I off track? It's just a simple question.
Listen, I've been off track and then I got on track. Like just by knowing that question, that's what I discovered. I was working with a client a few weeks ago and I said, do you know why that so many people are letting the outside control them? And he said, no, tell me what you think. And I said, because they're never committed to the goal. When you're committed to the goal, it doesn't matter what the adversity is. You just keep persisting. That's why to be a goal achiever, it's really about your determination. You've got to be determined. Like the people who are achieving big things, they're so determined and they fall down, they get back up. They fall down 3 times, they get back up 4 times. I can't tell you how many times I've fallen down. And I'm like, oh, this is interesting, but this is serving me. that's the attitude. That's why it's so important, the attitude, when we're working on the identity gap. And we've got to be patient with ourselves, because the identity gap sometimes is not going to change overnight, but it will change through consistent repetition of showing up as the person you want to be.
All right, I've got a double-sided question for you. So let's say you ask yourself that question, am I letting the outside control me? And the answer is yes. What do you do to switch that so the outside's not controlling you? And then let's say the answer is no. How do you double down to keep going in that direction?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So if it is controlling you, I want you to ask yourself, how is that serving you? Is it really impacting you in a great way by being more obsessed about what you don't want? Because all you're doing is implanting inside of you what you don't want, and that's all you're going to keep getting. So people do that because they use it as a crutch. I did it. I can relate to this because that was one of the big things I had to overcome. That was my identity gap. So I promise you, I'm not out here thinking like I know everything. Like I've been there, so I can tell you and deconstruct what I did that really changed the game for me almost immediately. It wasn't immediate, but it was almost. So it was a process. Like for me, Mike, it took me 5 years to not let the outside control me. Now, every year I was getting better. Every month I was getting better. So I was feeling better. Like my emotional state was better. But if you ask me how long of a journey had it been for me, it took 5 years of controlled attention on really emphasizing and catching myself when the outside is controlling me. Now, let's go to the other side. The other side, you are not letting the outside control you. You are literally in control of yourself. You're mastering yourself. Act like it's day one. Don't ever say, I did it. I get clients who will tell me, oh, I figured this thing out. I never let the outside control me. I just sit there and listen. I go, you haven't done it long enough. You're getting good results right now. But what happens the moment you don't get good results? So this is a journey of doing it day in and day out, but that will change the game.
Okay, you just led perfectly into my next question. And I feel like part of my job on this podcast is to be like the devil's advocate, right? Like, well, what if everything goes wrong? Then will this philosophy still work? So there are going to be days when it's easy not to let the outside control you because results are great or because there's no adversity that day. So how do you maintain in control of your emotions, not let the outside control you when things are not going great, when the results are screaming at you?
You have to have the same attitude towards winning and losing. You don't get too high when you're winning. You don't get too low when you're losing. And when I'm losing, I will say something really good is around the corner. As long as I'm taking the right actions, thinking the right thoughts. We can never control what's happening outside of us. We can't control the circumstances, but you know what we can control? Our response. We can control our attitude. And so you have to double down on your attitude. Then you're not giving power to the outside. And what you're doing is you don't know what's around the corner. When you're losing, you don't know what's happening behind the scenes. And, I can tell you, I think I was telling a client yesterday, he goes, Arash, I learned so much from your stories. And I said to him, Mike, I said, the only reason they're stories is because I implemented it, or else I wouldn't even be talking about them. But I remember, and this is for anybody right now who's really doing the right things and they're not getting the results. I want you to pay attention right here. I remember there was a time years ago, that was me. I was putting in the effort. I was thinking the right thoughts. And I called my mentor and I said, I'm super frustrated. He said, why are you frustrated? I said, because I haven't created a quantum leap and I'm used to creating quantum leaps every 90 days. He said, how do you know you're not doing it? And I said, the results. And he said, you're going to let the results dictate what's happening? And he said, Arash, you don't know what's happening behind the scenes. He said, you're only looking at the physical sides. But if you're doing the right things like you're telling me, I promise you something good is about to show up. And he said, he quoted a great book by Price Pritchett. He said, the absence of evidence isn't the evidence of absence. And I swear to you, within a month, I hit a quantum leap. Within a month of that conversation. But that was a huge awareness for me. Like, just keep doing the right things because you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. So this is for anybody who right now has not seen the results, but are thinking the right thoughts, doing the repetition of the right actions, and really focusing on growing themselves, I promise you there's things going on behind the scenes that are going to show up.
I love that. For years now, we've called that invisible results. You and I, whenever we're talking, like, well, I'm creating invisible results. Do you think that belief alone aids you in creating the results? Like if that result wasn't, or if that idea, that belief wasn't there, I just think that belief is like a magnet.
Well, that's why I always talk about delayed gratification. Like the winners in life, the people who are really winning, like year after year, month after month, day after day, they're more embracing of delayed gratification because they understand if I keep doing the right things, compounded over time, the results are going to show up. But once again, it always comes back to be, do, have. Always comes back to be, do, have. That's what we're talking about. And I'm telling you, most people have this backwards, Mike. They think once I have the money, I'll do the things I want, then I'll be successful. But true transformation doesn't work like that. First, you shift your identity. You become the kind of person who thinks, decides, and acts from their goal. Then you do from that identity. You behave before you're ready. You start making decisions from the goal. You take aligned action, and your confidence is going to soar. And then you're going to have, it's the byproduct. As a result, you naturally start attracting and building real, long-lasting wealth and success.
All right, I want to tie this back to identity. The attitude that you talked about having whenever you are in that phase of not getting the result or not letting the outside circumstances affect you. Is that part of your identity, the attitude?
Yeah, attitude is a huge part of identity. What is identity? Let's look at what it is. It's the most honest picture of how you see yourself. Well, we have an attitude towards everything. So we have an attitude towards how we see ourselves. So we want to see ourselves enormous. But none of this works without attitude. Attitude is results. Attitudes is a combination of our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions. So we ask ourselves, what is the attitude I have of myself? The winners, they don't know how to do something, but they have an attitude. I know I'm going to do it. I'm going to fail myself forward. The people who lose say, I'm never going to do this again. I'm going to quit I said I was going to create a business. It's been a year. I'm going to quit it. That's just all they're doing is a reflection of their identity. That's all it is. That's all it is. Like to get rewarded in life, you get tested. And that's why identity is the foundation of everything we do. And that's why finding our identity gaps, if I bring it back to the beginning, is the greatest gift we have, that we're aware of the gap. Because guess what? When we're aware of the gap, we can go change it.
I love that you call it and see it a gift. I think that's so powerful. Let's get into an action step for today.
So I want everybody to think, what is the goal you want more than anything? And are you committed to it? Okay, so ask that question first, because without commitment, it's not a goal, it's a wish or a hope. Now, let's assume you're committed. Now, what is the identity gap that you have to grow into to achieve that goal by the end of the year? And I want you to literally write it down. Then I want you to let go of anything that is not that. But I want you for the next 90 days to fill that gap, because the gap fills fast once you do it day in and day out.
So good. Arash, thank you. Thanks to all of you. If you enjoyed today's episode, go ahead and leave us a rating and review. And most importantly, share this episode with your friends and family or on social media. And we'll see you next week with another episode of the 7 Figure Standard podcast.
Thank you for listening to this episode of 7 Figure Standard. We hope you found the insights and strategies helpful on your journey to success. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a rating and review on your favorite podcast platform to help us reach more people like you. To learn more about Arash and Mykie and how Voss Coach & Co. can help you achieve your goals and reach new levels of success, visit vosscoachandco.com. Thank you again for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode of 7 Figure Standard.